Well, thank you so much for watching Morning Live. Now, coalition party governance has once again come under the spotlight. This as the Democratic Alliance is faced with challenges in two metros where it governed in coalition with other parties, and those being Nelson Mandela Bay Metro and Tshwane. Now, yesterday, the party held two press conferences, one in connection with the removal of a mayor and speaker in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, and the other regarding the impending motion of no confidence in Tshwane Mayor Msimang. Now, Professor Trevor Fowler is from the Wits Governance School, and he joins us now to talk about the role of local government, the role of mayors, and whether coalition governments, given the current issues that we are seeing, are actually, working. So, Professor Fowler, thanks so much for coming through.
Thank you. Good morning.
So, post the 2016 elections, the local government elections, we, I think for the first time, came to be faced with coalition governance in any real way, as we saw in the cities of Tshwane, Joburg, and of course Nelson Mandela Bay in quite a big way. There are others, of course, as well, but these three stand out because it allowed the Democratic Alliance and its coalition partners to wrest control of those cities from the ANC. So having had 2 years of watching what's been happening here, how would you assess these coalition governments?
Well, I think the key question here is that coalition governments are new in South Africa. And one of the key issues that I think has happened is there been a lot of focus on the power relations, where the focus should really be on what do the citizens say and what are the services that you are delivering. Because if you are focused on that, and as a government, when elections come, you then have you're likely to increase your mandate. But in the case of minority governments, the difficulty is that you have to work with partners who have slightly different agendas, which has really caused what people refer to as politics in our country, where it's taking all those into account becomes it's not a simple matter. It's a fairly complex matter of balancing those different interests.
So again, you talk about the citizens and their needs, but if we look at these coalition governments and how volatile they've proven, how have the citizens benefited from this?
Well, I think in many ways what has happened is that the South African voters are very sophisticated. And what happened in 2016 in several municipalities, people voted for their councillor, but when they came to the PR vote, the proportional representation vote, they didn't necessarily vote for the party from which that councillor comes. So they were really sending a message that, look, we're not happy with what you're doing. So what's important, and this is one of the things we touch on a course that we have, Leadership in Municipal Governance, where there are mayors and speakers at the university, is that you have to be able to balance this question of your local interest plus your party credibility. And I think all parties are struggling with that. The DA is struggling, the ANC has come to understand that, and they're really trying to look at how do they improve their credibility nationally.
I think we've lost count of the number of votes of no confidence that have been put forward in these various municipalities. But that, of course, speaks to, once again, instability, and it calls into question so many roles, especially at local government level. The role of the mayor, for example. How important is a mayor and the role that they play at local government level?
Well, the mayor is the leader of the municipality. And the role that they play is a leadership role. We have a system where our system of government is such that the political leadership focuses on the performance of government, whereas the administrative leadership are really focused on the detail, and they are accountable for the expenditure of money, they're accountable for the actual detail. So the question is that what you need to ensure is that administration remains stable and governments can change, but the administration will remain stable. One of the key challenges we faced over the last 24 or so years with our democracy has been that whenever there's a change, whether it's the same party, a lot of the administrative leadership changes. And I think that causes instability. If the leadership stays the same, the administrative leadership, and they also learn how to deal with different political leaders, you would then have greater stability. And that's one of the challenges. So a key challenge of a municipal mayor is to ensure that you're able to create the stability so the services can be delivered and you can engage in the political debate in the municipal councils.
But we know that doesn't happen because, for the most part, the mayor would appoint bureaucrats in those administrative positions who are still party loyalists, and that creates problems of, its own ilk.
Well, I think that's part of our maturing of our democracy, that in many of these municipalities where there's been tensions in the last few months has been the fact that the administration who were there were appointed by a different party. And so the perception of the new party is that these administrators must be loyalists and they should be removed. But it shouldn't be a focus on what their political leanings are, but whether they're capable and do the work.
Evidently, we haven't reached that level of political maturity as yet as a nation.
Sure.
So looking at what's happening now, Nelson Mandela Bay, where you had the speaker and the mayor removed. One of the things I must say that I find quite perplexing, because this is not the first time that something like this has happened. I remember Kimberley when a couple of weeks ago, when they wanted the community in that city, the mayor removed as well. And then suddenly we find ourselves in kind of no man's land when nobody is actually clear about, what is happening now in the interim. Is the current person who claims to be the mayor, the newly elected person from the UDM, Mongameli Bobani, is he the mayor? Is Athol Trollop still the mayor? What exactly is going on? What does that say about, the regulations? Are they not clear? Or are people simply not in tune with what the regulations actually say?
Well, I believe that the regulations are very clear. It lays out exactly how people should be elected, what the process is, and it ensures that it is clear who's elected if the processes are followed. What happens is that there are maneuvers that cause the regulations to be put into doubt. So in the case of Nelson Mandela Bay, you had the DA walking out when they felt that it wasn't in their interests, and so then you had the municipal manager also not being present, but the coalition that is now the government wanted to continue, and they got a provincial representative. So the question is whether it is legal or not legal, and it relates to the maneuverings. I think, and this will always happen, which causes the difficulty. And so the regulations are clear. It's the maneuverings that cause the challenges. And so what this will only be settled through some legal decision by a court.
So looking at the volatility of these coalition governments, we're asking a question this morning to our viewers, whether it's time for a fresh mandate, because it's 2 years since the local government elections, and we have seen, these motions of no confidence being brought and quite a bit of instability. And for the most part, you will find the residents complaining that service delivery suffers as a result of this. So do you think that perhaps going to the elections once again and trying to obtain a fresh mandate will change anything?
Well, that would really be based on the polling of what residents think now, because I think that the challenge that has happened between the 2016 elections and now is that there has been a shift in the national politics, in the politics of the parties that are there. So There is more credibility in one party, less credibility in the other, because they've had internal battles. So it's quite unclear what the outcome will be. But I think the key challenge is that when a government changes, an administration changes, you have excuse me, you have several months before it settles down, administration starts to work, you focus on the key challenge of service delivery. And so if you have elections, you're going to go through a similar period unless the administration is retained and there's some recognition that you have to make changes in a way that keeps stability. And I think that's the question about new elections. New elections can bring about stability, so it means for the next 5 years things can work. But the difficulty of changes every 2 years or so is that administration also gets unsettled and service delivery does get affected.
And given that there's so much talk about coalition governments for next year's general election, that may be the inevitable outcome perhaps, are we going to see the same sort of volatility and instability at national level?
Well, it could, but there's a slight difference at national. It relates to the macro picture of the country. So it affects largely the economy, not so much the local service delivery. So instability there affects the economy, which of course many would argue may have a greater impact than the local impact that it has in each municipality. And I think that's where the challenge for voters lies when they are voting. Do we want to make this point, or do you want to ensure that you vote for the party that you support? And for parties is to make their policies clear and to ensure that they run their affairs in a way that builds voter confidence.
And just a final one very briefly, the city of Joburg, where you have exactly the same coalition set up as you would have in the city of Tshwane and Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, but yet Joburg not facing the same sort of volatility within that coalition setup. Why is that?
Well, I think it relates to the complexity of running a coalition. First of all, in 2016, these coalitions were set up through national agreements. So it was clear the national leaders of the political parties went on TV and they said, this is what we're doing, and they set up these coalitions. Then it gets affected by how each individual mayor and their mayoral committee run that, whether they take their coalition partners into account when making decisions, or whether the coalition partners feel that they are being excluded. And the key difference that we have is that most of the coalition partners don't have full control, whereas the EFF is the kingmaker in this, and they're not a part of the coalition. So they, in fact, influence a lot of what goes on. And so it's very important for parties to take that into account when they are looking at how do you keep stability, how do you ensure that you remain in power at a municipal level.
Professor Fowler, thank you so much, and thanks for stopping by and talking to us about some of these nuances. Professor Trevor Fowler from the Wits School of Governance, and that brings us up to 7 o'clock, and we're going to go to the news.